Thank you so much for having my films here. I am very deeply touched. I'm Jan. Hi. This film was made a long time ago, in 1976, I think, and I was young. So I had grown up with terrible images. If there was anything called a lesbian or queer or anything, you never heard about it. But when you did hear about it, it was in a very, very bad context. So I remember when I was little, sitting on the floor in the living room, watching an old movie on TV. It was called The Children's Hour. And this is a movie in which Shirley MacLaine and Audrey Hepburn play partners, business partners who own a girls' school. And one of the girls starts a rumor that the Shirley MacLaine character is a lesbian. And it's not true, but for Shirley MacLaine, it is true inside. She's never admitted it to anyone. And I remember there's a scene in the movie where she finally confesses to Audrey Hepburn and she says, and I quote, "I feel so sick and dirty." And then in the next scene, she hangs herself. She's found hanging in her apartment. So this was my introduction to what life would be like as an educated lesbian. Like if you were even really successful in a career, you would get to hang yourself. When I got to film school and to the time of the feminist revolution and everybody wanted to turn everything upside down and make things right that had been so wrong, I wanted to make fun of and also, well, really ridicule the stereotypes of lesbians and a comedy in Six Unnatural Acts. You know, there were things that were saying, "Oh, please accept us. You know, we're just like you," which was good. But I wanted to make an entertainment for lesbians that could be seen by anybody else and enjoyed by anybody else, but that would satirize the ridiculous stereotypes of being a child molester or being a wallflower that, you know, was a lesbian because men had rejected her, and so on and so forth. So that's where it came from, that world. You know, I saw that question. It really was very provocative because at this time, I feel that there have been so many changes, and LGBTQ people are somewhat seen as people that can have a range of characteristics like anybody else and can be a good person or a bad person. But obviously the hate still exists. And in my country, hate or resentment of people who are considered quote unquote woke, you know, the idea that you should have a positive attitude toward an LGBT or trans person is used by the right wing in my country to stoke resentment. And the first thing that came into my mind when I saw that question of what stereotype would I add now was the super woke queer person who cancels people or who has something to say about what everybody else does wrong. And I realized that that's a kind of a scary thing because that is what the right wing in my country is using to promote a very scary time. I tell people, you know, Thank You and Good Night is a movie that has like every buzzword that would make you not want to see a movie, right? It's like documentary, grandmother, oh, it stars a cardboard cutout, and yeah, it's about death. And cancer, let's not forget cancer. So it really doesn't seem like that good an idea to make a movie about that. And believe me, if I had had any idea, but I didn't know what I was doing. And maybe that is something that helps make things original, because I wasn't trying to make a certain kind of movie. Actually, it started when I found out my grandmother had cancer, and I thought, well, I'd like to do a tape recording with her so that I have that for myself. And I discovered that she had this great dry sense of humor. We had kind of taken her for granted very much in my family. She was a generation of women who did not have a lot of opportunities to have careers and so on. And my mother was always rebelling against being like her. I was busy rebelling against being like my mother. So when I put this attention on my grandmother, I found out that she had ideas and she had a sense of humor, and she was willing to talk about contemplating dying in a way that was very captivating. And one thing led to another. With a bunch of friends with film equipment, we shot some documentary footage before she died and a little bit after she died of my family. I had no funding. I had no idea what I was going to do with the footage. And so I ended up writing a script over a few years after my grandmother died, in which I made a cardboard cutout figure of myself as a 5-year-old experiencing these events, with the idea that when someone dies, time kind of gets collapsed. Every time that you knew that person, it's all the same. It's all present, my 5-year-old self, loving my grandma, was the one who was there feeling all the feelings. So I think intuitively I just created this cardboard cutout character who would guide us through the experience in the documentary footage, and also asking the big unanswerable questions that death brings up, like, why do people have to die? Or why didn't she teach my mother how to cook? Believe it or not, there were some people who weren't sure this was going to work as a movie. So that's how it got made. And people like James Seamus and Lynn Holst, and Lindsay Law, and Sandra Schulberg, who runs Indie Collect, were all at a place called American Playhouse, and they ended up giving the film money to actually finish shooting. And there's a condensed version of how it got made, and it premiered at Sundance. The film was almost a kind of a crutch for me to be able to spend that time with my grandmother, having a camera, having a reason to be there. And it gave her a chance to say goodbye. As you know in the movie, she says, bring the cameras, bring the film, bring everything to wherever she's going after she dies. She clearly loved the idea that she was being immortalized in some way. I'm sure she could not possibly have imagined that one day I would be talking about her to someone in Taiwan. She said, "Oh, you ever going to take these movies out and show them, Jen?" Okay, we are, Grandma, we did. Sadly, my mom died 3 years ago, but she got to see the revival of the film. Of course, she was its biggest fan when it came out originally. And she was there when the restoration was first presented at the Queens World Film Festival. And Richard Brody of The New Yorker gave it this amazing review, which helped it get in a Criterion collection and get shown all over the world again. So my mom was there, and since then she passed away, which I don't like that either. The film is kind of a protest against death. It's not really let's all accept death. I mean, we have to accept it. What choice do we have? I don't have to make a movie saying accept it. No, my movie is more like, no, I don't like death, and I'm going to protest it but then it's kind of futile. But after she died, I found in her condo. She had like a whole cabinet full of every review. Now I'm going to start crying. You know, every flyer, everything that had ever been written about the movie. She saved it all.